Welcome to this special episode of Discovery Matters. For many people around the world, it is summertime, winter if you're in the southern hemisphere, but everybody who is speaking on this podcast is in the northern hemisphere, so it's summertime. So we're taking a break from our regularly scheduled editorial programming. And this show is going to be an homage to another favorite podcast, because in order to create a podcast, you have to be a podcast fan. And Connor, am I right? You and I love the podcast No Such Thing as a Fish.
There is no such thing as a fish, and it is an amazing podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, you totally should.
Right. So we're going to do our best to have a No Such Thing as a Fish style fact show. And because we needed somebody clever and wonderful, we brought our very own colleague, Kaycee Palumbo, to join us. Kaycee?
Hello, very excited to be here. And I am as well a huge podcast fan, not only in science, but also financial and crime. So I think they're excellent. Just happy to be a part of this conversation.
Kaycee, I hope that your facts are going to be scientific crime facts today.
Okay, we'll try.
Right.
Game on.
Game on. Let's go. The first fact we're going to throw right to you, Connor McKechnie. What is your fact?
The amazing fact that I've discovered this week is that scientists have revived a 32,000-year-old plant straight out of the Pleistocene. So they have resurrected and grown from 32,000-year-old seeds, and this beats the previous record holder by, guess how many years?
Oof. 100.
1,000.
30,000 years. So in 2007, a team of scientists from Russia and Hungary in the US, they recovered some seeds that were frozen, and they were Silene stenophylia seeds, I believe, and they were looking at some ancient ground squirrel hibernation burrows. And they'd found these frozen seeds in ice deposits in northeastern Siberia. And by using carbon dating, they found that the age of the seeds was between 20,000 and 40,000 years old. And they only went and growed them. Amazing. So they successfully revived one of those seeds, and they made a flowering plant from 32,000 years ago fruit.
Well, along the lines of Earth's early life, I read something about, do you know what cenotes are in Mexico? These pools? They're gorgeous. They're fantastic. If you ever make it to Mexico, go swimming in the cenotes. They're fantastic for tourists, but they're also a rich place for scientists to go discovering ecosystems from hundreds of thousands of years ago from the Earth. So I'll tell you specifically. So there's a scientist, Valeria Sousa Saldivar, who is studying the landscape in Mexico in a place called Cuatro Cienegas, means four marshes, and this is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. But they discovered traces from hunter-gatherers that date back to 2275 BC. So that's a long time ago. And they're still able to track biodiversity. So they're discovering species of snails, fish, turtles, and plants from way back when.
Wow. Old.
Yeah.
So they're digging around in the sediment at the bottom of the pool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Here it says, based on the water chemistry low in phosphorus, iron, and nitrogen, and the presence of living stromatolites, they were able to recreate the marine conditions found worldwide millions of years ago.
Insanely cool.
Insanely cool. Kaycee, do you have anything ancient to riff on Connor's first fact?
Trying to find something fascinating. But instead of going from history, what we could do is go to putting things in context with kind of the galaxy if we kind of tie things together.
Cool.
Did you know that the smallest, so going kind of from the water to the world, the smallest known viruses are called circoviruses, and they are only 20 nanometers, which is extremely tiny. So kind of going back to your micro organisms here in your water. So the viral genome that many of us are hearing about quite a bit today is 1,700 nucleotides in length, and it codes 2 proteins. So that, as an example, the HIV genome has 10,000 nucleotides long, and if you put that number in perspective, there are 1,011 stars in the Milky Way, and in the universe there are 1080, so 1,080 protons. So tying it back to these little tiny circoviruses that are 20 nanometers, it's pretty amazing the length of the nucleotides.
So we cannot see any of that with our naked eye.
No,
And are you saying circle or circo?
Circo, CIRCO.
So how
Okay.
much smaller than like your normal everyday hanging around in the air virus that's doing our head in at the moment size are we? What's the scale here? I mean, is it like a teeny weeny virus?
Yes.
Yeah.
What we've heard is it's 0.00002 millimeters in diameter. So that's the teeny tiniest. So now as we're reading about, Corona, COVID 19 and how it could be aerosol in nature, when you think about the other types of viruses that are out there, they're exceedingly tiny. So it's just interesting to note how small some of the things that we're researching are.
Does it count as an organism, a virus? I think it does, doesn't it?
Viruses are actually not alive. They are inanimate complex organic matter. They really lack any form of energy, carbon metabolism, so they really can't replicate or evolve. Viruses are then reproduced and evolved only within cells.
So they depend on living things to do their thing.
You know, I was thinking about scientific vocabulary, and you said circo, and of course that comes from a Latin root circ, which means ring, and so it means around. And I started thinking about, so why do scientists go back to Latin and Greek roots to name new discoveries? Does either one of you know?
I don't, but I love that. And it reminds me of Cirque du Soleil and how important it is just in general I just
to
my
our
mind just
to our cultural well-being.
yeah.
I
But
want to say it's something to do with like the language of learning in like the 16th century or something being Latin or what have you. Something along those lines. Is that almost right?
Go way more practical than that. It's because the languages are no longer spoken, and so these meanings do not change. So it's stability. It's about stability.
Okay, so that's because languages evolved and words that meant a certain thing like 100 years ago in English means something completely different today. And so because these languages are no longer spoken, oh, that's clever, isn't it? It's kind of you've
Yeah.
got some stability in your genius.
And in fact, Connor, it gives us a chance to tell the audience what Cytiva means, because that has a lot to do with why we named our company Cytiva.
It does. And as we all know, cyto is the Greek for cell. And then eva is kind of a Latin suffix which connotes life, but also denotes capability and knowledge and understanding. So it's kind of knowledge and understanding and capability with cells, which is what, predominantly our customers have.
Let's move to fact number 2 in the program, and Kaycee Palumbo, that one's yours.
Excellent. So my fact is that the scientists at the J. Craig Venter Center, or JCVI, they actually created a living cell with a synthetic genome that was made from scratch in 2010. It was actually modeled after a living organism, and many of you may have heard of this, but it's the first living cell in how long? Let's guess. That was made without having a living parent.
We must be
Ever.
talking like billions of years.
Oh, you're
Like,
right. Yes.
yeah.
3.5 billion years. And it cost just a mere $40 million to build.
Well, I mean, you do the
How,
math on that. $40 million after over 3.2 billion years.
yeah.
That's not very much spent.
Can we know more about the 3.2 billion years ago? How was it done then? I can't. What did labs look like then?
3.5 billion. I think we're back at the ponds, right? Replicating on their own. But it's interesting, tying back to this, what considers a life, and what will this mean, a billion years from now, or even 1,000 years from now, because how quickly science is now moving at such a pace that even within our lifetimes, what will be considered alive may really innovate.
So let's then talk about DNA. Do you know if you stretched the DNA in one cell all the way out and made it flat, how long would it be?
Is it to the moon and back?
No, it's the DNA in one cell, 2 meters. But if you put all the DNA in all your cells together,
It's
then
the
it
moon
would
and back.
be twice the diameter of the solar system. That's according to the BBC.
Whoa. That is absolutely insane.
Those are some serious ingredients that make us who we are and why we are, I think.
On that ingredient piece, isn't it interesting to think about that 99.9% of human DNA is actually the same? And it's really the 0.1% that codes for all the differences that make each of us unique.
I read somewhere that we are actually 99% the same as a lot of other species, and just that 1% is different. How close are we to chimpanzees?
Yeah, so we share 95% of our DNA with some types of primate, yeah. But we also share 50% of our genes, which make up 2% of our DNA, with guess what?
Fungi.
Fruit
No.
flies.
Fruit flies is a correct answer. Yes, it is, Kaycee. I'm actually thinking of a plant.
Bananas. Coming back to your ancient virus, Kaycee, 8% of human DNA is made up of ancient viruses that used to infect us and make us ill, but have now been incorporated into our genomes.
All right, let's move to our third fact. And so that is mine. And I think you're going to like this. This is about a scientist who is studying the microbiome and how it affects our mood. So the scientist Katja Gavrish calls it the psychobiome, and that gut bacteria might change the way we think, feel, and act.
So you're saying that, like, what's going on in our guts and the bacterial composition and the chemicals and the enzymes that they release can affect our psychological state, our minds, what we do, can control us.
That's right.
That's ultimate, like, oh, the way to a person's brain is through their stomach.
Or through what comes after it goes in the stomach. Our poo.
You said that's the really most roundabout way of saying poo.
But you're right. Now, taking that a step further, then could our yogurt or our kombucha, right, bring us better, better moods, right? It would be interesting to see then out of that what certain things that we may ingest may help us.
Well, and in a way, it's science bringing forth what ancient Greeks believed, and they weren't sure why they believed it, right? But they believed that mental disorders arose when the digestive tract was producing too much black bile. So that's the connection between the gut and the brain. They didn't quite know what was going on, but this scientist is figuring it out.
So there's been a lot of work done on the gut microbiome and how the microbiota affects things like the blood-brain barrier and how it affects inflammation and connections to diseases, as varied as autism or conditions like autism, and then diseases like Parkinson's and so on. And it's become really clear that we're a lot more complicated than we think. But did you read the one about the mind control fungus?
No. What?
So this has been demonstrated very clearly, and we've seen it happen in ants and cicadas. There are fungi that whose spores land on ants and cicadas, two different species of fungi on these different species of insect, and they grow. The mycelium of the fungus grows inside the ant while it's alive, and at the right point, it exerts some form of mind control through chemical releases that forces the ant to climb to a specified height on a plant, anchor itself in a leaf at that height, and just latch on and promptly die there. At which point, a mushroom sprouts out of the head of the ant and scatters spores below on what is almost inevitably going to be the ant colony that the ant has climbed out of.
So I feel like I'm in the middle of an Attenborough documentary, Connor, as you describe this.
This is, I think, where it actually first came to kind of like general awareness that this was a case, that this was something. There was the Attenborough documentary where we saw that fungus. It happens in cicadas as well, and it's even more gruesome, where the fungus growing inside the male cicada causes its abdomen to disintegrate, and the cicada, high on essentially amphetamines and a hallucinogenic drug which is exuded by the fungus, flies around in a frenzy, spreading spores out of the back of its abdomen all over other cicadas.
Good God.
It
Yeah.
is. Well, and the first part of your story, I thought, wow, this is fascinating. We should try and replicate that, use it. To help others kind of do work alongside each other towards a common goal. But then you talk about the second part, and it's gruesome and horrendous. So we'll have to have a bit more studies on this before it can be utilized effectively.
It's zombies. Zombies are real. No one believes me. Zombies are real. So, Dodi, no science is good without references, and if the audience want to go and see the references for the facts that we've ridiculously compiled in this podcast, they can go to cytiva.com/podcast, and where you can look at them all.
You can reach us at dodi.axelson@cytiva.com.
And you can tweet me at Conorato, or you can email me at connor.mckeachney, Google that, at cytiva.com.
And I'm Kaycee Palumbo at kaycee.palumbo@cytiva.com.
Well, okay, thank you both for your facts, and I'd like to invite our listeners to contribute their facts when they give us a rating on any of the podcast apps that they are listening to us. Thanks, everybody, for listening.